Hey guys, so this is part two, continuation of where we left off uh, from this crash landing effect. And yeah, so we are still working on this. I think it's going too fast. So what I'm going to do is kind of select a few polygons in the middle here, just where this should land, and then turn on proportional editing, push them down just a tiny, just a bit, just to create some influence on this. So you can see that's better, but it's still going off far too. Uh, it's still going off the crashing side. So what I did here, you can see this doesn't. It never does, because I added some kind of block up here. I don't know if I can show that. And see, is this here? So when this is about to jump off or bounce off the ground, I have this kind of block to collide with this to avoid it from doing that. But there are other ways to do this. I think you can increase. Let's see, if you select this and go to the rigid body settings, you can increase the drag on the object. Sorry, the damping. Yeah, it's called translation damping, to reduce how far this slides. And I think at around here we can animate the translation drag to increase because of the resistance on the ground. So let's add a keyframe there, and at around here you can increase this to something like that, and see that is better. I think we can have it immediately when it collides. We should have some drag. I didn't add it there on this previous version, but I figured in this version I think I could try and add a little bit of effort on this. So let's see. So it's kind of acting like friction, and I think we can also animate the rotation here. So the rotation drag, so that we don't have it rotating too much. So let's see. Need to add a keyframe for that. Okay. Maybe increase the rotation drag even further, and let's see what else can we do here. I think I can increase the friction on this surface. So if we go under surface response, I can increase the friction by a bit, and also the friction on this by a bit. And let's see. I think that is better. Let's increase the timeline a bit. Let's do 200 frames. Now you see that the dynamic painting stops at around this frame, and it doesn't the ground is no longer displaced at that point. So what we can do, if you select the dynamic mesh and go to the settings, you can see that the end frame is set to 100 frames, and that's where the dynamic painting calculations stop. So we want this to be the length of our timeline, which is 200 frames. Now if we simulate this again, you get everything now. But I don't like how this is almost dissolve or kind of disappearing inside the ground. Maybe I can increase the size of this ship. Let's see. Okay, now it's flying off. Okay, let's see this. Maybe that's too much. We need to retain the drag here. Let me push this down just a bit. Yep. You can always add an object, or you can see as it is about to rotate down here, you can just have it hang around that side. I also wanted to land on this side where we have where we can see more details. So what I can do is add an object here. So I know it will land right around here, so I can add something like a stone. Hey, just simulate something like a stone here. Or just put it around this position here, so that instead of this falling on this side where we don't see a lot of detail, it can fall on this side where we have more detail. So I'll give this a rigid body, then passive. So let's simulate this again. It should fall on the other side, so I need to place this a little bit further this side, and I want to clear this dynamic. Or what we can do, if give this an initial rotation towards, so that its rotation is biased to this direction. So let's see. Okay, I think let's first get rid of this drag animation. I think it's these two here. You can retain that later after we get the animation we want. I also think the friction is leading to this to bounce off too much. So let's see. Yeah. The higher the friction, the more likely this will bounce off. So let me reduce that. If I remove this, get rid of this. Yeah. So then bring back the drag at around this rotation, as around this keyframe. I'll add the translation and rotation keyframes. And let's see what happens. Now let me try pushing these vertices just up a bit and see how that looks. It's just pushing that up. I just want to have some resistance around here so that this doesn't go and fly off. So there are a few things you can do here, and to stop this from doing this, from flying off, you can play around with the drag. You can add some collision objects that you can hide for render times, like I did on this version here. You can see I have this object that doesn't render, but you can see if we go to render mode, you won't see it, but it's there to stop this from going off the scene. But I think we can go to the next part where I explain why I have this third mesh here. So because I had this this pole that shattered into different pieces, I wanted it to collide with the ground, and the pieces should fall into this trench that is created by this ship. So if we had rigid body here, rigid bodies here, and let's just use cubes here just to demonstrate what I mean. Just imagine these as the poles we have, so just going to make a few of them here. Let's clear this animation, and so if this spaceship collided with them, they should fall, some of them should fall in the trench. That is what you would expect. So let's give them a rigid body system. So rigid body active, and you see they will just fall through this surface because it's not a rigid body. And if you give it a rigid body object, so rigid body, you can see the issues we start running into. And also the dynamic painting will no longer work on it. So that's why I didn't have it as a rigid body. And that's why I needed a third mesh to contain that information. So let's see. Let's first simulate this. You can see this collide with that, and actually I don't want them to be that strong. So let's reduce maybe their mass. So 0.5. Oh, just increase the mass of this object so that it can hopefully collide. Okay, it's too strong, so let's try 10. 5. Still too strong. 2. So some of these cubes, maybe let me scale them down a bit. Should fall directly into that trench that is dug by the spaceship. But right now they're falling through this. And if we make this a rigid body, what happens is that we get a completely different mess. So let's just duplicate this into a different layer and remove the dynamic paint. Now what we want to do is give this a rigid body system, but because we no longer have the dynamic painting, this has to be passive, not rigid, not active. Because we don't have the dynamic painting, this no longer creates a trench in the system. because this is already on top of the surface. So what I did is I made sure that this here took up the form. First of all, I made sure that this shape doesn't collide with this surface, and for that, let me first make sure that you can easily see this surface and differentiate it very easily by making it a grid like this. And so I want this object, this spaceship, not to collide with this grid, because it's going to be the grid to kind of collect where these cubes will fall in, but we don't want it to be a collision object for this. So what we're going to do is give it its own collection or group layer, collection layer here, so that any rigid body that shares the same layer with this object will be able to collide with that object. So we want these cubes to collide with this grid, but not this spaceship. So I'll select those. I don't need this. And go to the rigid body settings. Let's see, where are they? Rigid body. And make sure that they share the same collision layer, the same collection layer. And but these objects here, these cubes, because we want them to interact with this shape, they have to share the same layer with this and also share the same layer with this. So that's why you see I want them to have two layers that they are active on. So this and this, one is for colliding with this, and another is for colliding with this grid here. And this grid is supposed to be on layer 2, so that it doesn't interact, or it doesn't have any interaction with this mesh. So if we play this back, you see we are still making the trench, and this should have a passive. Let me make sure that these are not intersecting with that grid. So I'll push them just up a bit. So some of them are colliding with this object. I'm not sure why. Let's see. Let's first push them up even further just to see. Let's see. Let me hide everything else here so that I can get a better picture of what is going on here. Okay. Yeah, so some of these are not on the same layer as this, don't share the same layer. So just go through them and make sure that they share that layer as well. Okay, these two. You have to hold down Shift to select two layers. So like that, and then like that. Now they should all collide on that, but the ship should not collide with this grid, and the ship will still make the dent. Let me first clear that dent. But we need this grid to also deform to the same shape. So the way you do this without having the dynamic painting, you just add a surface deform modifier and select this the surface with the dynamic painting as your target mesh, and then I will need this to first clear that ditch or trench and bind. Now when this creates a dent, a trench, this should also the trench should be translated onto the grid like you see there. And now we can go into the physics property of this, and right now, let's see, right now these are not falling into that trench. Let me put them a little bit up so that you can see them, or let me scale them down and maybe give them let's just reduce this to 1 kilogram so that it can be stopped by these blocks here. They have some animation, so let me not have that. Just want to show you that this can fall into the ditch, and right now they are not falling in, simply because we still have this set to the shape type set to convex hull. So we need to change this to mesh, and make sure that we have this deforming check mark set to active, so that, because this is also the mesh is deforming mid simulation or mid animation, so that's why we have that active. So if we play back, they should fall inside the ditch. Unfortunately, they're still refusing to do that, so let's push some of these up so that they have some time. Yeah, I'm not really sure how I'm going to make this fall in. Let's see. Yes, I will have to put one very high up in direct path of the ditch, and hope you can see they would fall inside the ditch, like what you see in this setup. So without doing that, you would have no way, at least in my experience, it was very difficult to get these particles to fall into this ditch without that third layer, and none of them did fall in, but they do fall in. Anyway, I'll leave this part here, and I think that will be it for this tutorial. I don't think there is anything that I need to explain here. Maybe I can in the next part, maybe in a different type of tutorial, I'll show you how to set up this pole here and how you can make it breakable. So thank you for watching.